I need to write that as a script, like the second it goes live, to go and hit the mute, like automate that step. We could sell that for $1 billion. John, and
hello, everybody.
Hi.
John,
Hey.
morning.
Good.
Happy Friday.
Hey, what's up?
Happy Friday, you too.
It's hard to believe, but you know, in a few more weeks we'll have finished a quarter of the year already. Is that insane?
Don't say that.
So hope everyone's doing well. Let's see. Oh crap, I'm in the wrong. How am I doing that? Is Jean, can you take a look? Is my channel streaming? That does say that, but somehow, oh, I see. I'm logged in as my own, a different account, even though it's streamed to the right channel.
It is streamed.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just switch to, hopefully this stays there. There we go. Now I'm me on my channel instead of alternative self. So what's going on? Anyone have anything they've been working on?
Well, there's a lot of things going on. So on my end, you know that we're dealing with the course itself, but I also have been working on certain like little classes for myself when I have a little bit of free time. And it is interesting that you just asked Tom if he has worked with classes before, and I think John works with classes all the time, right? So yeah.
Well, you know what, and I'll answer for Jean just because I know when he gave us our intro to classes, tutorial, he was saying he does use them, but I think there'll be pieces of this course that he'll enjoy.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
And Jean,
I use what I know what I use. I don't know classes at large. So there's a lot of things that can be done with that. And I'm using part of it to make it easy for objects to talk with each other in quick access pop-up. There are objects for a folder. A submenu is an object, and it's a container for favorites. So all these things are objects that are in classes. So that's
I do have a question
with that.
I do have a question for you. So have you used classes as templates for other objects? Like have you reused a class in a different object, like using it as a template?
I think, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I'm using classes to create objects or instances
right, no, but I mean,
class,
like, for example,
no, you give me an example. I don't think
right, so
it's the kind of thing I don't know.
Like you haven't
classes.
tried. So for example, when you say like class object extends another class, have you done that? Yeah, so you have
a little bit, but it's quite complex unless you have a need that it will solve a big issue you're having. But I didn't find an issue that needed this kind of solution.
No, so that is actually my question, because basically one of the reasons why I understand other people use classes so often is basically the templating of it. So it is interesting that I haven't used that very often, and the programmers that I know have not used them either. So it is interesting that
I'm using subclass
not being used.
I'm using subclasses. For example, container can be a submenu or a group, or a container of various favorites. Then there's a subclass which is favorite. In fact, it's called item. So I have container and item. So, and they are included in one and the other. But the way I use them, they could be two separate classes and it would work the same. So I made it kind of
just
hierarchical, just because it was logic to do it that way. But I haven't found any benefit of doing that, like things things being reused, or you change something at the top level and it also change in the child object. So I haven't played with things like that. There's probably nice things to
But
to
basically,
do.
that's a very good point about of something that I might need to kind of like drive a point in the course, and it is examples of that. Because maybe you think like, no, I haven't used it because I don't need it. But probably when there's an example that I show you, like you would say like, oh yeah, that's something that happens a lot in my program.
It will simplify some of my code,
Yeah.
making it easier to maintain or things like that. Yes.
Yeah.
That was the one thing I told Isaiah is have examples that are abstracted, and there's the here's a box, or here's a dog, and using an object or a class example. But that's where I see a lot of people fail in bringing it back to actual programming and giving programming examples, because that's where it's so much easier to understand the real functionality and how you're going to use it instead of the concept. So we're making sure we include a lot of examples to drive that home. And when I say we, I mean him.
Exactly.
But at least you understand what he's doing.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Well, it's really, I told him the other day, I'm like, it's very fortunate that I don't have a clue what I'm doing in them, right? Because otherwise, like, he will just assume people understand things.
That's the problem.
Right?
Yeah, that's exactly the reason why I'm asking, because it might look like, that's something that you should understand, but it's not that obvious, because not even I use it that way. So it is not that obvious to come up with that idea, So it's good to kind of like show real life examples, so that it kind of like the idea pops on in your head, like, oh, that is something that I have seen in my program. That's the way how I would use it. So
What I've been doing this week, it was to make my GUI for CSV body to be adaptable to custom fonts. So to make the controls, the labels, the edit control, the checkboxes and drop downs scalable, if you wish, if you increase the size of the font, because when this application was done in 2014, our screens were smaller, so the interface was, the font I had at that time was okay, small but okay. But now with all these HDPI screen, your large screen, it's almost not possible to read sometimes. So I really had to do that, but I can show you an example of it. But it's a GUI with a lot of control that have to be grouped together to make it logical, and making it adaptable to various font type or font size was quite a challenge. That is, I finished and then I released it, and first feedback I have is from someone having a GDPI screen, a high resolution screen like Surface Pro, that has scaling, and with scaling it's a mess. So I still have some work to do. Happily, I know how to deal now with the scaling issue. We've talked about that in maybe one of our first Friday calls, to find the screen resolution of the user, and then adapt or divide all your, reduce or augment, I don't remember, all your numbers that you get from the command, not win move, but the command where you get the position. What is it? So the
win get position, or
yes, win get pos does not take into account the scaling. So the
right, it doesn't.
You have to divide it by a ratio that is 96 compared to the actual DPI of the screen. So
exactly.
It's a little formula, but once you understand that, it's easy to implement. But I still have to do that. But what was funny and what I've done is that I have to group things in columns. So I had a function that returned, before I give a position to a control, I have a function that creates a temporary GUI that will create this control and return the size of the control. And then if I have 4 controls to put in the same column, I will send to this function the full 4 control content, the text that will be contained in this control. And the function will return what is the largest, the widest of these controls, so that I know that my column has to have a given width,
at least
to contain every content, regardless of the font, regardless of the translation that could be done later, because in French, it's always, I would say 20 or 50% longer than in
Alright.
English. So you always have to take into account that it could be longer in other languages. So it's a nice function that I could share if we have some time to.
Oh wow!
It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. It's just useful.
No, let me tell you, I'm really interested in this because that is kind of like one of the biggest issues that we have with GUIs in AutoHotkey, as AutoHotkey is only using the Windows 32 API GUIs, like it's just using those, and those are not developed with this fluency in mind. At that time, they were all position-based.
It's not liquid as we say
Right.
in HTML development.
For example, So
cannot adapt.
We have a lot of manual work to do, and there has been a lot of effort. I remember there was the first effort that I know of. It was the attach function. I think it was created by either Tank or Polly, one of the guys on the forums, that he created a lot of those weird functions. And the attach function allowed you to have kind of like, allow you to move a GUI and the controls would position themselves to that other location, right? But
yeah, there's a lot of code to put in the GUI size command to adapt your content. Yeah.
But not only the
width,
GUI not only the GUI that you're moving, but actually move the controls or
the controls,
all of them, right? So it was a little bit that was the first effort that I saw, but it always had the same issue with the scaling that you're mentioning. So as soon as you have these DPI differences between computers, now we have a lot of weird things going on that I do not have much information about that. I'm really interested about what you have done on that.
Yeah, maybe if we don't have questions, we could jump into
Jean,
that. Yes,
I'm curious, did you look at the stuff I sent from Dimitri that he did for keeping track of the DPI per monitor? It was like, remember Isaias? I think it's a DLL call.
It was something I don't think it's some maybe in the future. So thank you for sharing this. But it's if you have an issue with having different monitors with different scalings, and my application runs just on one monitor, so I don't have to deal with this this issue. But another thing I think is Dimitri who done that is to create GUIs using objects, and lots of objects, and having something very flexible with that. So that's the next step for me. I've done this GUI with a lot of lines, that could be all this could be put. Maybe I don't know if classes would help for that, but at least having more functions and more objects would help. But if I share this with you, I apologize in advance. There's a lot of lines.
No, don't worry.
And when you change a number from 85 to 87, you have to change it 8 places because it's not all.
That's one of the issues.
That's the next step to make this more easier to maintain.
No, but basically it is, and for the people who are watching, this is completely normal. You first write code that works, and then later on you refactor it to something that is actually more manageable. Yeah. But basically, it is not like bad coding practices. It's like, this is the first step.
It's not fun. It's not fun to just not fun to present to others.
No, but basically you start with code that works. So you know it works. Then you need code that is maintainable for later on during your time. So it's good. Yeah. What does this like maintainable? Right?
As we said,
that works.
That works.
Coding is debugging, right? Like
It was funny.
Coding is writing, hoping, and then debugging because you hope it will work because it all seemed okay before you press run, and then you find what you have to.
I was just
some of us pray too, just
plug and pray. Yeah.
But basically, I was finding it really funny because you said like as soon as I released it, then I had this feedback, and I'm like, that's exactly what happens. You make perfect code. The only moment that you will realize that it's not perfect is as soon as you release it. So it is impossible for you to release code that is going to work. As soon as you release it, there's somebody that is going to have a problem.
Joe, excuse me.
And
Joe,
code
maybe
it's like it doesn't stop. Like
it never stops.
You have to support it.
Yeah.
Joe, maybe there's an issue with the streaming.
Like people don't understand is like, oh, I released the code, but I still have to like support it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Tom. just a word for Joe. It seems that the streaming is frozen. I don't know. If you look at YouTube, that's the same image that does not move at all, even if I refresh my browser.
Mine's updated.
Yeah, I was saying that to him.
We see the four of us, but frozen at this time.
I don't.
No, it seems to that in your computer.
It's fine for you, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, you're like.
Oh no, it was paused. At some point, I pressed space, I think, on that window instead of pressing space on Zoom. My apologies, Tom. Tom? You're quite in the dark. You know, we don't see you very well.
Yeah.
And I interrupted you, so sorry for that.
He was just saying my upload speed was low, so I stopped Dropbox entirely just so it's.
Yeah.
Liz and I are syncing the files for the course.
Okay. So the topic that Tom was bringing up was that about coding is actually alive after you release the code. It's not like you finished. It never ends. So if you're creating code to share to other people, what is going to happen is that as soon as you open and share that to the internet, like people are gonna complain about it.
You know what?
All the time.
It's one of the. I hadn't thought of it that way, but what I always tell people, you know, when you go to a restaurant, if you've never waited, you know, worked in a restaurant and waited on tables, you know, you need to understand how hard it is to work in a restaurant, you know, stuff. And people would complain, oh, they did this, that, right? It's the same thing with the coding. If you've never written code and shared it, and then you see all the people who aren't even paid clients, like you said, hey, this doesn't work. Hey, this doesn't work. Hey, add this functionality that like
it should do that. It should do this. Yes.
Right. And it's just one of those things. Once you start doing it yourself, you really, you know, that's why now with
it's
Jean,
easier.
Like I'll say, hey, you know, I had an idea maybe you want to do, but I totally understand if you don't want to implement it, because
it's easier to have an idea than to implement it.
Wow.
And
So
just finding if it is feasible, sometimes you have to think a lot. Can I do it? Particularly in quick access pop-up, where there's a lot of things existing that something new has to fit into that. You don't want to break something that is the I don't know the English word, the fondement, the basics of the architecture, for example. Yeah. Do you have questions, Joe, on the chat or?
Not yet. Nope.
So maybe I could share my screen and show you my CSV body code.
Very good.
Let me open this.
I love.
Give me a second. I'll be in a second.
Yeah, it always cracks me up as CSV, and people when you ask them what it means, they're like, "Well, it's you know, it's comma delimited," and you're like, "Yeah, well, it's comma separated values, right?" But it's kind of ironic to me that the abbreviations we know CSV, but no one really says comma separated values. They always say comma delimited, right? Like,
and many of them are tab separated instead of comma, so or many other things. Yeah. Okay, I'll share this. So this function is get y this control. So it sends to the function. I have to send to what kind of control is it? Is it an edit control? Is it a drop down? Is it a label?
So
the type, and then a variadic array of text for the various content of these controls. So I create a temporary GUI that will be destroyed at the end here, and I simply create. I set the font to the current font. Font is the same, depending if it is an edit or other controls. There are two types of fonts. So I set the fonts, and then for each label in the array, I create a control which is edit or text or checkbox. And then the next line, I'm getting the width of this control. I'm using the handle of the control to get the information here. And if the width of the first control is larger than 0, I keep it. And for the second, if the second is larger than the first, then I keep the value of the the widest of the
Yeah, exactly.
two.
So
And I'm looping to the 4 or 5 items that I can receive here, and it will return. It will
the
destroy the
widest. Oh,
GUI, and it
that's
will return
interesting.
So where I'm using this is. So I'll show you the application, and I'll just change something to load some content in it. It's just a little lower here. So here, the application is, I'm using tab. I changed to use tab 3. Maybe you know there are 3 versions of the tab control.
Yes, yes. I wanted to try that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I tried 3. The main difference I've seen is that it's themed differently. So there's a white background here that you don't have in the tab 2, I think, that I was using before. So in each of these tabs, I have a lot of control that I load. So the creation of this GUI is quite a big number of lines. And for this one, there are mainly 4 columns, columns for the labels here, a column for the start of the edit control, a columns for the buttons, and a column for the help buttons, and also a column for the undo button that I have to find something better as a character for the undo. But all the buttons are done with text, with a character. And there's a lot of Unicode character that you can choose from, and the undo character in Unicode is not very nice.
It's too small. Yeah.
It looks like headphone, as someone told me. So, so I'll have to change that. But it's something I added. So if, for example, if you rename, I rename the last column here, I can undo this renaming, and for every for select, this is a little more complex to undo because here I'm removing a column. So I have to take a backup of the content in order to be able to restore.
Right.
But for the other, it's easier. Anyway, I'm just jumping from one thing to the other. So back to the main topic is that I have to align all these buttons here. So what I'm doing here, and I will return to this tab 2. So I'm sending to the get widest control function the 4 text labels that are rename, order, select, and merge fields. So these variables contains these 4 text. Then it tells me what is the widest of those. Same thing for a few others. Same thing for the width of these buttons here. And this edit control is the one that will be stretched if I change the width. There's a minimal width, but it can get full screen like that.
Yeah, exactly. This is great.
And this control here will not change. So you cannot have, I could have the 2 controls to change and make it percentages between one and the other. But in the end, what is, it's this one here that could be longer. That's the new feature I showed you a few weeks ago that I was calling reuse fields, but I changed the
name for merge.
Yeah. So for example, I could create a column here that will use F1 with some fixed text, and then F4, and the new name will be F5, for example.
So you grab those 2 and merge them.
And this new column will take the content of column A, column 4, and add the text that I put. And I can also undo that.
Okay.
So that's, yeah, so that's, but in the options here, I can now change this label to Arial. I don't know how you pronounce it in English exactly, 15, and save it. And I'll have to restart. Yes, I can discard changes. So you see all these labels are much larger. The buttons are also higher. I also have something that, and so there's a few hidden field that will appear only if you select an option. Here, if you select fixed width, there's a new field that will appear. If you select HTML, you will enter the HTML template. So, there are a lot of controls are
hidden
visible or hidden and visible only if.
But your function actually is taking those into account anyway. So
yeah.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. For example, here. This one is different. It's not the same type of control, so but the beginning is the same here. Yeah, so it's been the work for the last week.
Okay, that looks
so
awesome.
I'll return.
And
so that if I could share this, that's this here, it's to get the 8 for the buttons, and this one is to get the widest control.
Right. On that, can you go back to the other here? So for the fonts is just as a suggestion, and I'm not really sure if you have seen that. Why don't you use the font dialogues from Windows to choose the font?
Oh, it could be, yeah.
Right, so that would be kind of like a...
I have to change this tab here to a real dialog box, something that is more like what I have in quick access pop-up.
Right.
Something like this with maybe tabs at the top, or so I could reuse the code I had developed to manage these tabs here and have something more developed, but was not the priority at the time at this time. But it's something that, yes, every control here could be much improved. And
no, but
yes,
that's
it's
I'm sorry. Let me see if I kind of like explain myself a little bit better. It's not like you create the controls. There is a dialog from the system that is already made that you can use to select a font, right? So instead of you creating the GUI for selecting a font, you can actually just call the system dialog for that, and you have the option of, for example, for picking colors, the color picker as well. I think. Let me see something. I don't think it's there. I remember.
No, it's not there. Maybe it's on the forum, but it's not in the help file.
But here's the thing: that in the forum there is a library that accesses those, but that is a DLL call. You just call a DLL that. So, oh, hold on. Let me see. I mentioned that to who was it? Oh, Dimitri. I think I was talking to Dimitri because he recreated the the color picker dialog. He recreated completely, and I was like, man, that is interesting. How do you like? He did a very good job at it because it looks exactly the same as the original. And I said, right, but you could call the system dialog for color picker. And he was like, I didn't know that you could do that. Let me double check.
I did a quick search on the forum, but I didn't find that.
Yeah, let me see if
search.
So here we go. And if I remember correctly, because I showed him the library, and it is a library that can be found on GitHub. So let me go ahead and see if I can find it on GitHub.
I found a function that that can return what is the default font for your GUI. The default font for your GUI in AutoHotkey is not the same depending on what OS you have. So what I found on my system that the default was Microsoft. How was it labeled?
Okay.
It's Microsoft sans serif, and the size I
Here,
think is 12.
There we go. I found it. So,
Okay.
So let me
share your screen.
Yeah, in a minute. So let me just 1 second. I'm not really sure. Oh, I just forgot that. That's not what I wanted to do. But in any case, I'm not really sure if this is the original. But let me show my screen real quick. So this is a library. Let's see. Yeah, this is the one that I knew. So the system dialogues, it is from Mile Ezo. So he has a library, and remember that I was talking about the attach thing. So this dialog here allows you to open the color picker. And once you use it, let me see if this has, let me see. So this is the color picker, the find and replace dialog, which is from the system, the font dialog. This is the one. So we do have here, maybe we have kind of like examples of it. So let me see if I find the examples. So it is a huge thing. It has a lot of, yeah, so it is from the standard library and so on. But let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and open it. Download this one here and just test it out. Let's make it so it doesn't matter where. Go. So
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
yes, now I can hear.
Okay. I'm gonna kill my internet.
For a second, okay.
Something like Joe's like jumpy, like he's like
Okay.
like all over the place. You're muted.
So let's see what this does. So the font
Hello?
itself. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Joe's you're muted.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
So in that case, what you can do is you're gonna come back in a minute. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna reset the whole system.
So
This is bad.
I understand.
It's
so
like
it looks like output. Okay, and okay, so I will use this GUI here just like this, and I will just use each of the functions like this, and the color and the effects. I do not need anything else. I think that's good. Let me see what happens here. So this is what I meant. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
So basically, just by using this function, this is what is going to happen. When you call the function, it brings this dialog, which is the original Windows dialog for this. It allows you to pick a font and a color, and when you hit OK, this is saved into those variables here. Now, I'm not really sure what happened here with the font name.
Yeah, Unicode characters maybe, or
yeah, very likely. But basically, instead of recreating the whole GUI, you can just call the system dialog and just let them pick it like this, because that way you can even have a preview of the font.
Yeah, very
and it is easier for you to code. And the same you can do with other dialogues here, like for picking up an icon, for opening a file or saving a file. And basically, at least this one is very important. I use it from time to time, which is picking up a color. So when you use this, and you can actually, if you assign a handle for a parent GUI, it just makes it so a child of that GUI. So you can use the function as a child of another GUI. And what is going to happen is that you get this. You see the color picker from Windows.
Yeah.
And I remember that Dimitri went ahead and basically copied this whole GUI just to add a second part here that allowed him to kind of like set the transparency of the color. So it was really amazing. And I was at the moment, at the time that he was showing me his GUI, I was not understanding that he wanted to have the transparency. I said, like, why didn't you use the dialogue? Like the original dialogue, and he didn't know that he had access to that. So
Yeah.
I think this is a very interesting tool that allows you to just, you pick a color, whatever color it is, and then you hit OK, and now you have the color value.
Yeah.
It is a very good library for not having to create those controls yourself, you know?
It's good to use things that are already made until you want them to do something that it doesn't do. Yeah.
You just mentioned the reason why I like classes, because now if that function doesn't perform something that I want it to do, then I can modify it without breaking the existing code. And
not if it is a Windows component, like what we've seen for.
Oh, no, that's true. Exactly. So if it is a Windows component and it has, you have to redo it
and add what you want to.
Yes, that is true. That's what happened to him. So he wanted to add like transparency. Well, we didn't have anything for that. Yeah, had to redo the whole thing.
I have another example of that in Quick Access Clipboard. I'm using Windows functions related to the edit control to do search and replace. So instead of having to code search and replace, you just send the command to Windows and it will do the search and replace on your control. But the search does not support end of lines. So you could not say, for example, \n or something like that to say replace end of line with space or something like that. It just doesn't do that. It's something that I'm using very often. So that's a reason why at some point I'll have to just put aside the Windows component and write my own.
That is right.
But unless there's one existing, maybe I can find one on the.
And that's the other thing, and that's something that I have talked to Joe about. Sometimes it is just a matter of simply going to the internet and finding libraries that really do certain things. Like, for example.
So what you just showed us to select the font. Can you put a reference, a link somewhere that I could?
Yes, sure.
Take note of?
And by the way, let me just show you in general. If you take a look at the function itself, it just sets a variable into they're just creating an array. They're creating space for an array, and they're calling this method that is on the Windows computer itself. And it just passed that. So basically it's a method that you can find in a DLL call. But let me go ahead and give you the link to it. And that was.
Do you know if it works on both 32 and 64 bits?
That is a good question.
Because maybe the answer really you got, you know, the scramble font name you got, maybe it's because there's no conversion from one to the other. It doesn't seem that it.
At least this one might not have it, but I remember, as I mentioned, that the original one, which is from Mao-Iso.
Because it's dated 2013. At that time, 64-bit was less
it was
frequent.
Not there.
So maybe it can be found in a more recent version.
Yeah. So this is the function itself, and this is. Let me see something. Did he add? This is the original. I know that this guy, he created a whole library of functions that were amazingly good by that time. The only thing is that I'm not really sure. Outdated. This is maintained via the forms framework, which is another thing that he has. That's his own another thing. But let me give you the one that I found, which is this one.
It can be adapted to. There's a few.
Yes. So, but in general, I wanted to kind of like send the original.
Yeah.
But for now, this is the one that I found. And
hey, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Hi, Tom.
There you go.
Oh, that's way better.
There you go. Sometimes you have to kind of like kick the computer.
I copy your URL to the chat.
On Joe's YouTube. No longer going like this.
He was dancing, right? Okay, so this guy, I don't know, also Machinator, this guy, framework, HK, that was a very good, oh, here we go. So the forms framework, and I would give you this, this was updated last on 2019. So this one is kind of like a little bit more complete. So it was for creating GUIs. It was a library for creating GUIs. It is not, you know, I don't know if it is really relevant anymore, but it had this align, attach, the combo boxes and other, like the high edit, the hex view, H-link. So those are controls that you couldn't access straight from the AutoHotkey syntax, but I think it allowed you access to them. I think there's a rebar control. Here it goes. I don't know if you have seen the RA grid and the rebar controls for Windows. So those are, let me, I don't know if he has images about how that looks like, but those are specific, how do I say, controls. Oh, okay, so maybe if I do this, rebar control. Here on top of your programs, I don't know if you have seen these toolbars that can have icons, but you can actually extend them and move them and change the size of them.
Mm-hmm.
That is what is called a rebar control. Now, on the AutoHotkey syntax itself, you cannot just simply say GUI add rebar, right? So what you would do is use this this folder and just include it on your program, and now you have access to those controls. So those kind of things, it had a lot of interesting, like the reach edit controls, the scheduler.
Can you pick any of them independently, or
Yeah,
are they in a kind of framework? It's not a framework that you...
It is a framework. You can include them all at once, but you can actually just select the one that you want. Okay. So you can just grab the rebar and download that AHK by itself, and that's it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can do that.
It's a library.
Yes, it is a whole library, and the second link that I sent on the chat is for this. So you could take a look at how it works, but each of them is just like you click on H-link and you can download that HK if you want. So it is not like you have to download the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm just posting your link to
now this
to
again,
YouTube.
Yeah. Now this is one thing that those things those are old stuff, like 11 years ago, 13 years ago, because those are based on the Windows 32 framework, the Win32 API still. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen for now a framework that is as complete as this one, but for the new Windows forms. So we are stuck with the Win32 controls still, but I think at some point somebody's going to work on connecting to the .NET framework, for example, or the Windows forms for Windows 10 and those kind of things. So take a look at it. For some people, it might be really beneficial because, again, as I mentioned, there's a few things that you do not have to rewrite everything. Mm-hmm. You can have the icons. This one here in particular, this grid in particular is really cool. Like RA grid control. That's a very interesting. I think it looks like it gives you access to certain type of things that you cannot do with the list view because it is a grid control. Mm-hmm. And we cannot access it with the AutoHotkey syntax. So that's the reason why he went ahead and created there is the DLL, so you don't need to download it. It's just right there. And this is the wrapper for that DLL. So give it a try and you will find that there's a few interesting stuff that you can do with it.
Cool.
Thanks, Zayas. There's a lot of awesome
No.
stuff. Which is also another point of if you're not used to classes, and some of those are classes, right? That this is
It might happen. Yeah. Oh, just to show you here in the same control, when I enter into RagRead images, it shows you what you could do with it. And for example, two things that jump out to me is that you can place check marks in one instead of at the beginning only. You can actually put it in one of the columns. You can put icons in one of the columns as well.
Not only the first one.
And look at that, it says like button that probably you can click on it and perform an action. So again, this little, it is again, it's a list view, but it removes a few of the limitations that you might have with a normal list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we should tell Tidbit about that.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. And again, you just have to open the AHK file, take a look at the functions that it has to add a column, add a row, and then just play with it a little bit.
Cool.
Does anybody have any, speaking of questions, anybody have any questions? Tom, do you have any questions in your channel?
You're muted.
Am I muted again? Damn it. He's muted. Okay.
I was referring to Tom.
Quick question. I just put it's not AHK, but it is GitHub, the GIST or GIST, how do you pronounce? I'll share my screen, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I have the same issue. I don't know if it's GIST or GIST.
Yeah, so this here, GIST or Joe, how do you pronounce that?
I would say GIST.
GIST?
I would say GIST.
Okay, so I created one just to give access to the snippet of the function to get the widest control. How can I edit this? It says revision 1, so I should be able to
top right, hit edit, top up.
Oh, here the edit button.
There
okay, I was looking in this.
Yeah,
Okay.
like in itself. No, but yeah.
Okay.
You
I'll just add some comments here to help users use this.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay, and if you're interested, Jean, I have a AutoHotkey script that you need your token basically, but you can highlight the code, hit a button, and it pushes it in there for you. And
from the editor, from site, for example.
From anywhere. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Very handy for quick sharing.
Cool.
Yeah, it asks for the name and the description, and then dumps it there and returns the URL and the wrapped one if you're posting it onto a website, which is what usually I'm doing, right? But yeah, it's very handy. Sorry, I was. And Tom, did you ever unmute, or do you have? You can just nod. Do you have any questions in your channel? Technology is so fun, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So his internet is dead. He says you're in and out. No, but we can. Yeah. No, everybody. So it seems to that he has an issue with his internet. Yeah, because it has been. It is okay on my end here. So, in general, I think
we do have a question.
Okay, go ahead. I was gonna see if I asked a question, but yeah, let's hear that one first.
Okay, so Lex just said they wanted to ask if the AHK email sender is still actual.
I see. I mean, does that mean like updated, like it is up to date?
Well, and I want to clarify because when he says email sender, I assume he's meaning like what's it called? The CDO thing that uses like for Gmail is my guess, because I know Tom mentioned the other day something with that they're getting rid of their third-party access. So, I mean, I haven't used it in forever. From what I read that someone had posted is that if there's the creating the third-party password, but I haven't tested it. But can you clarify, Lex? Is that what you're referring to? Because you could still I use AutoHotkey to send Outlook. I use AutoHotkey to send through our Mailgun API. There's lots of ways to use AutoHotkey for sending emails.
Yeah.
Tom's here playing charades.
Yeah. Oh, now you see it. Now you saw that. I saw that a while ago, so I didn't see your. So yeah, he's making a few things. But if you just saw that,
Yeah. Well, he could. Anyway, is he messaging anywhere? I saw him typing.
Yeah. He's typing on the chat. Yeah.
Oh, in the other chat. Okay.
No, on Zoom. So. Okay, so for the email sender, well, I'm not really sure I know which program that is. So probably if you could send the name of the program, we would double check if we already updated or if it is still working, which is probably what he's asking.
And then someone asked if we can discuss using basically the append, the dot equals to append a variable. And Brian, can you clarify what you're trying to append? If it's just text, right? I'd be amazed if you're having problems with that. Perhaps maybe you're trying to do stuff with numbers and expecting a different answer. But maybe can you clarify what? And Isaiah, why don't you go ahead and just start writing an example?
Okay.
And I could just share the documentation about that.
Sure. Or you can,
and Isaiah could just take over the share control.
Well, you can keep it going too.
So
you know what you're doing.
This is the one we are asked about.
Even I know this one.
Yeah, but there's a lot of others that are doing the same. So it's just saving a few characters when you type, and maybe if you want to show an example, Isaiah.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and.
Can you copy that URL? Is that actually a URL that is?
No, I'll. It's a.
Oh, that is from the
file, but I'll find it and share it.
Yeah. So I have it right here. So this is what he was showing. I'm not sure if you can see the screen, but basically you have different ways of assigning stuff, and he was actually talking about appending. Now, when we have appending, so we can have a variable here, some text, and you can go ahead and append something else like this. And in the end, when you go ahead and message box that, you should be able to see the two texts together. Now, this appending of stuff is more used with strings. If you have something else, say a number.
He gave us an example. I'm going to throw it. Actually, I'll throw it in Telegram.
It would it would not add them up. It would just put them together, right? So now let's go ahead and take a look at the chat itself. I'm going to use one now. Sorry.
He posted some code, but the end of lines were stripped by YouTube, which is not. The chat on YouTube is not convenient for sharing code.
Right. So let's see if I got this. No, just 1 second. Here's what we got. Let's take a look at, oh, hold on. We have an if statement here. It's doing a message here. Else if message, else if, and else if here. So this is probably what he sent. And what he's doing is that he's just using that as a way to, now in this case, well, yeah. I think I know where you're going with this, but let's double check. So if I have RB title here as number 1, I should just get a message here that says troubleshoot, right? That's what I get. But probably the person would have a string of numbers because you want to troubleshoot and configure. For example, you want to append those two. Now, your if statements are the ones that are wrong in this case, if that's what you're looking for. Not that they're wrong per se, but if what you're looking for is kind of like appending stuff, depending on which numbers are on our title, I would actually use a different approach. I would say if in string, which is a function that you can have, this is what you're looking for. And I would switch all of those. And I would do this. So 2, 3, and 4. The reason now, the point here is, and I would actually not use an if else statement because the else is going to, if one of them gets executed, then the others, if one of them is true, the other ones are ignored. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the else from each of them. And I would just check on it several times. Now, if I have 1, 2 in here, I'm expecting those 2 messages to get appended, which is what is going to happen. So if you set a code like 1, 3 here, it would grab the 1, add troubleshoot to it, and then it would grab number 3 and actually append it as well. So the 2 things that are going on is that, first of all, if actually this is what you're looking for, okay, because it might be that I'm understanding the request incorrectly, but if this is what you're looking for, you do not want an if else just because if one of them is true, all the others are ignored, and that's not what you want. And the second thing, you want to check if the variable contains that number, not if it is equal to it, because if it is equal, it would not allow you to just append based on different numbers. I don't know if that answers your question, but basically now your code starts blank and checks what string is in there, and for each of them append something else, and now you have different options in there. Not sure if that's what you were looking for.
I think you got it right. And that was, at first I was kind of confused too. I was going to say, hey, if you're taking that approach, when it gets to 12, it's going to find the one and the other one. But then you, I think, correctly intuited that that was actually the goal.
yeah. So basically,
yeah.
the reason why that got something that tipped me off is that he said troubleshoot and put a space in it. So each of the options, like for example, troubleshoot here had a space right next to it. So I figured he wanted to append then configure, and that had another space and append the next one. So basically he kind of like wanted to build a message one after the other, but the if else statements was actually preventing him from that, because as soon as it reached one of them, then it ignored all the others. That's what was going on.
And this is where, not that we have to change it, but like a function, you know, could be really helpful. Just kind of simplifying it a bit.
Yep.
But I think for what you're doing, if this is the level that you're at, it's a good, it makes sense to you, right? So hopefully this part makes sense to you. Now, okay, let's see, because I saw, hey, Joe, I saw Lex was asking, he was the one that asked about animating hellbent switches, and he said he didn't get how to animate it. And if I remember correctly, it was the point was with the class he was using, you can't quote unquote animate it, right? It's just toggling between.
He would have to manually do it. And unfortunately, like for me, I do not have like a lot of information on that topic to go ahead and create an example really quickly, because I do not usually animate GUIs, but I know the concept of how to do it is just with the loop. The problem is that if I'm not at that level, there are some people that might be able to answer that, but I can't.
Yeah, and actually, and I was supposed to talk to Hellbent last weekend, and then we just didn't connect. But he's getting around. And then for my setup, so this is back to Brian. For my setup, the way it's set up, is okay if it ignores it can only be one.
Okay, so if he, so in his setup, the original setup that he had, you can only pass one value. It is going to be either or. It's not going to be like, it's not going to be appending stuff. So let me try to have a visual representation of what I'm trying to say. So again, how he had it is okay if he does not want to have a string that appends different stuff like this. Like in this instance, you have like a string that has many stuff based on what you put in here. But if it is like the RB title is going to be only one number, yes, then the if else statement, like else if, like this, it's okay. And in that case, you can only have one number, because now you will have one, the others are not going to append. And if you put an invalid number like 13, it's going to come up blank. Well, let me see what happened there. Oh, well, because it checks on the in string, but let's make it as you had it previously. So now let's go ahead and do this. This is what you had, right? In this instance, which is correct code, but if you put a number that is not taken into consideration up here, what is going to happen is that it's going to come up blank, because you cannot have 2 digits in there. So again, as I mentioned prior to this, it depends what you're really trying to do. If you want the value to be only one of them and not append different stuff, then you don't even need to append. You just use the normal operand and, you know, to assign it, and that's it. You just assign it and just select one of them, like number 2. That's it. You know, configure or, you know, discuss. That's it. But if you want to append many of them into one, then the else if is not going to help you out on that one. And in that case, I don't even understand why you would need to append. So in that case, you don't even need here on top the message.
What I was going to say.
Right. So you don't need to append. You're just selecting a specific value based on what the variable contains. In that case, you don't need to append anything, because you're not appending. You're just setting it to it. So in that case, that would be.
And even though I still think I'd stick with this, but you know, if you were more advanced, I'd say a ternary is amazing. However, I was going to say the switch command.
Exactly. That's the one.
Does help a little as far as it's like this, in the sense it's easy to follow, right? Like, and I get that. Even though it's a more advanced topic, it's still easy to follow.
So now you just put the cases, and a switch, you would only use it when there is only one variable. In this case, it would be our title, and that variable can only be one of those things. So in that case, you just message, so message equals whatever you have here for this one. That would do the same. You will have the same effect with the switch statement. And it's the one that I would use in this instance, because if you're only working with one, so you have only one variable, and that variable can only have one of those cases, then this makes a little bit more sense and removes the need of the if else case statement. So in this case, the code would work exactly the same. And for some people, it might be a little bit easier to understand what is going on. You have one variable that can have one of those values. That's it.
And then just because well, okay, I think he did give Will David asked, is there a way to add 1 hour to a time that is text? And then he gave an example, but I think, you know, I mean, the obvious answer is absolutely. AutoHotkey has some great built-in stuff for.
You see, John might be able to answer that one. He has done that, right?
Well, I was going to say, Isaiah, which we didn't record, if I remember correctly. Remember the other day you jumped on and you were showing me the differences with the minus and the
Oh
pluses.
my God, yes.
And it was a crazy kind of bug that you identified. I don't know if we want to go into that, but
No, but basically, yes. Now, here's the key information. He said like a text time, like the time is actually text. Like say, for example, and this is where I would first.
that's why I said was it depends on the text, and the format of your text.
The format, right? So if he has like, and I'm not sure if this, if I could grab this, pass it on to you in case he needs it, like for us not to lose that code, right? But here's the thing. If you have a date, the main idea here is the format of that date. If you have something like 13th June 2021, then no, you cannot simply do math on that. You would have to convert that into a string. Right. So you first have to convert that into a string. There are libraries for that. But basically, the easiest way on AutoHotkey is if you use the format year, month, day, hours, minutes, and seconds. So this is the format. If you have a variable that contains this format, and to show you what that looks like, it would be like 2022. Today we're on the month 4, which is 04, day 8, and the hour would be 12:06 and some seconds later. So that's what that format looks like. So it is a very simple format. And if you have a variable with that format, yes, you can do math on it. Now, there are variables in AutoHotkey that you can use, like a year, like that. And that would give you a
year, full word.
Oh, you can do this, right? Yeah, sorry.
YEAR, yeah.
Yeah, so in a month like this, it would be like this. And that would give you...
Oh, month, a full word, I think.
Right, that would give you...
Oh, yeah.
And you can create it like that, okay? But you can also use the a now variable, which also contains like the current time in that format. Now, to perform math on it, if you're doing adding or subtracting dates, you can always do date plus equals, and that plus equals, when you pass a specific date format to it, you would add or remove whatever you want. So for example, if I want to add a day, 2 days to the time, I would say 2, D, and that would go ahead and add 2 days to that date. So we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to do a message box up here to see what the date is. It tells me 0408, which is now. And if I do, just 1 second. Oh, I know what is going on. I have to do the math first and then show the message box. So, because that comma is being seen as part of the message box command, and it is not. So now, if I go ahead and run this, the date is the 08, right? And now, as I added 2 days to it, now the date is the 010. Okay, so that's how you perform math. I could also use year. So now what is going to change is the year, by the way. Let me see what happened there. Oh, because I need to add the full. So it has to be a, I know that I was able to do that with month. Right, so this is for month. That's minutes. Or year would be double Y now. So let me go ahead and look for that information here. Let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. And add is the name of the file, the value here. And it tells you, okay, so you can add seconds, minutes, hours, and days.
And not hours.
But you, sorry?
Not hours, not years. I mean.
Not years, exactly.
Yeah.
I cannot add months or years, by the way. But it seems to me that I can add days. But if I want a year, I would do 365, and that's it. So I would do 365.
12 months. 12 months is safer. The 12 months will be safer because.
But I don't have months here. I could have seconds, minutes, hours, and days.
Oh, there's no month either. Yeah.
Right. So you don't have months either.
I remember
so.
I faced that. I had to
Right.
code a
But in
workaround.
general, there are workarounds for it. So, but in general, you can add days, minutes, hours, or remove them by using the plus equals, right, to perform the date, math, but you use a minus here to remove 365 days. So this case, from 2022, it would go down to 2021. So again,
or you can change the plus before the equal sign to a minus.
That's where the bug is. So no, you can't. So even though it seems like it works, but it's not, because if you go ahead and do this minus equals, at the first time, and this is what happened to me, I thought that I could do that, but in the end, there was a bug that was not allowing me to. So first of all, you cannot use the parameters here like that. And basically, if you go ahead and try to convert, say, for example, 665 days into the format, the year, month, day format, it would not work either. It would give you an integer instead of a date. And sometimes that integer resolves into a date and everything is working fine, and you think that everything is working fine. But later on, you find out that no, it's not working. That happened to me to one of the programs. And once you go to the manual, it says that this is to compare date time values. It is not to perform math on it. And it also tells you, if you want to add or subtract a number of seconds, hours, or days, use an add. So it is telling you, like, and it says like subtraction is achieved by adding a negative number. So that's what you thought was what I thought.
It's easy to be confused by that.
Exactly.
You would think because if you look at if you look at the syntax, is just to change a plus and a minus.
Exactly. But in this case, in this particular case, changing minus here on the front, it does a totally different operation.
It's
which
to
means
compare
that
dates.
Comparing.
Having the number of days or
exactly
between two dates.
Exactly. It was just tell you how many days are or how many minutes are there that are different from.
Good to know.
Yes. So basically, if you want to perform date math, you have to use add or the plus equal sign
with a negative number.
Right, exactly, with a negative number. So minus 365 days, it would give you then the whole year in these. So again, I have to change that to plus. That would give you the correct information as you're looking for. So if I did not answer your whole question, but at least I pointed you in the right direction. If you want to understand how to do date math, this is where you would go ahead and start looking for it. And it's better to use this type of things because using the add operand or the plus equals takes into consideration leap years and leap seconds and those kind of things that you don't want to deal with. What
could be interesting is to look at is after that you need to format your date. So we could take a look at the format function.
Yes, you can go ahead and grab this the last message box here. You can format it however you want. You can just use the format function to grab that. So format, I think it was the I'm not sure if that was, it's not this one. Set format is the one.
No, format is good. It's a little bit complex to use because you have to give the format parameters in a kind of in an array or something like that, you know. But it's very powerful. You can get any kind of format you need.
Right. What I'm thinking is like, if I could grab my already year, month, day format and so let me show you what I remember. So there was this set format here.
Yeah.
And it gave me, hold on. No, this is not what I'm looking for. There was set date. So there was this.
And it's replaced by the format function.
Format time. This is the one that I'm looking for. So format time allows me to do the following. So format time I have my output, those be date, my input, which I don't know if that could be a variable there. Yeah, so it would be probably date like this. And the format I could use probably, here we go, long date.
Yeah, because
And
you can,
that would-
yeah.
So this allows me to convert an a now string
And you're using
into a
the
readable.
yeah, and you're using the Windows knowledge of how to format dates in your language. Because if you would be
Exactly.
on a Spanish system, it would return the date in Spanish.
Differently, right, exactly.
Yeah. If you
But
just
basically-
need to play with the date, you could use substring with the string that contains the date, because you know that the 4 characters will always be the year and then 2 characters for the month. So playing with substring is very easy if you just want to grab the numbers and put the number of the date or the time where you want. But if you want something more powerful, that's
right.
a good thing.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing. So when you mentioned the format function, what I was thinking is like, I know the format function is extremely powerful, but I think it doesn't deal with dates the way how format time works.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
So this one is just as simple as telling it what I need. I just need the short date, the year, month, whatever, and it would just go ahead and return the string for it right away.
Yeah.
So this is a pointer to how to work with dates in AutoHotkey, but basically just keep in mind that it should always be plus.
So that's
equals.
a good reason to continue to use a deprecated function or command, because it's not been replaced with something that is as convenient for dates.
Well, in this case, and just make sure that, just to clarify that, format time hasn't been deprecated. So this one is not deprecated. The one that is deprecated is format.
Set format.
Set format. This one, yes, is deprecated, and this one is not supposed to be used.
Yeah, okay.
Longer.
Format time. Good.
Yeah, format time is different, and this one is not. This one is still there, and I don't think it's gonna. Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's gonna go away anytime soon.
Great.
By the way, and I might be blurring the different people asking different questions, but part of this had to do with, I think it was doing math to create a new time for a meeting in an Outlook email, meeting invite. So I have an example of creating an Outlook using AutoHotkey, and actually I think it does some math on the timestamp. And I put a link to the gist. Hopefully there's nothing secret in there. I didn't look too closely at it, but this is one I used to use. I deleted some of the stuff because it was from our older webinars that I would use to send out.
Now that is the reason why I kind of like mentioned about the format for the string, because I think Zoom would be expecting a specific format for your time. So if you use the functions that I just mentioned, you perform the calculation using the plus equal sign, then you use the format time function to format it to what Zoom is expecting, which you can do.
Well, now that I look at this might have been because I know I was actually including links that they could click to add to their Google Calendar and their Yahoo Calendar, but I can't remember though. Maybe this one actually wasn't for Outlook. I was using Outlook to send it, but I don't think it was actually. Let me look, because I have a billion examples of stuff.
Not sure if you're sharing.
I'm not.
Okay.
Let me see if this one. This is better. Okay, let me copy this one. Sorry. The other one still is really interesting because it would allow people, you could create a Outlook, calendar invite, or give them the same thing to click to add to their Google Calendar, right? Or Yahoo.
Okay, yeah.
I think the one Yahoo one changed. Also, incidentally, which is what Isaias is alluding to, the Gmail and Yahoo timestamps they don't work exactly the same way as far as using the daylight savings change time. So I always had to, look at it very carefully when we would change the time zones. Yeah. And I'm sure Isaias could have figured out how to programmatically have taken care of it. I was just doing it manually.
I would definitely use an API for that. Like if there are websites that deal with time and date, and they usually have an API available and for free, I would definitely do that instead of trying to figure it out myself. Actually, this is a very good, I don't know for many people, but this is a suggestion that I have. If you're creating a program that is going to deal with time and dates, just don't do that yourself. You're gonna save yourself a lot of time trying to figure out those little details. Just use an API that already exists or a library that already does that, and it would be better for it.
Well, one of the funniest emails, and I could find the link somewhere where I saved it because Geek Dude sent it to me, and it was like the assumptions made by programmers, false assumptions made by programmers around time, and it was so complex, the stuff that goes into it. Amen, Isaias. That's why you use someone else's that's figured it out, because
at least with that type of thing, notice that I did not tell you go ahead and add or subtract or do, no. I use whatever I have available, and if that is not enough, I would look for an API that I could just call that API and it makes the conversion for me, and I just use whatever and let them deal with that, because trust me, it's going to be more painful than you realize. As soon as you start actually working with it, you have to take into consideration so many things, so many details.
And then there's, this is something I dealt a lot with in data science, just because I would get time stored in different ways from different things. So there's the how you get it in and converting it into like a standard way. And then if you're going to use it in some other service, adapting it, and if you're dealing with, in this case, someone else's time zone, also adapting it to their time zone, it's really complicated.
I will give you this is a very old video. I would send you the link to it, and it is a resource. This is part of where I got like this video completely convinced me of it. Like I did try to work with time zones myself once. I found it extremely difficult. And then a few years later, I saw this video and he arrived to the same conclusion as I did. And in general, that is a channel that I really recommend to anybody who works with computers, programming, and anything like that. It is fun. They just talk about different programming issues without going into programming. They just talk about the concepts. In this case, it's like the concept about problem with time zones and time computing when you're doing your software. So it is just like a very interesting video. You just take a few minutes to look at, and just
Brian was asking how do you go about finding the APIs for dealing with time. I would just do a little Googling.
Yeah, in general, very likely you just go to a website, say, if I particularly use timeanddate.com, and very likely they have a section that says APIs. So most of those services are free. There are others of them that might be paid. And as Joe said, you just go ahead and Google a little bit. But in general, an API is just you sending a little bit of a.
It says it's free for 3 months.
Okay, so this one seems to be paid.
But you have 3 months to try it.
Yeah, so you have 3 months to try it. But there are other APIs that has to do with time API free. You should be able to find something that gives you at least a basic conversion for time conversion, at least. But in general, yeah, a simple Google search or for those type of things would result some kind of like general idea of where to start searching for them.
Did you know that some time zones are half an hour compared to the others? It's not only hours. In some cases, it's half hour time zone. It's crazy one. You have to code something.
I'm telling you, man.
And some don't observe it, and then some states don't, but some cities don't in some places. Like it's
that's the reason. That's the reason why I don't deal with that. I just don't deal with it.
Yeah. Guys, I'll have to leave. So thank you
for
all good stuff you bring. Talk to you next week.
Bye, John. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.
Everyone for being here. Let us know. Hopefully you got good value. There's a lot of great information in this. Every week we're getting, I think, more and more fun and interesting questions. So thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.